you here today. Welcome to the Virtual Cats Corner. And we're really happy to have you here today. So by default, your audio is automatically muted, as you all know, and then it's just to remove some background noise. But if you have any questions or comments you want to share, please feel free to just unmute yourself. You could feel free to contribute at any point during the session, but we'll go over that in a little bit, how the session will go for today. You should all have access to the chat section, so you can also either speak up or write in the chat section. So welcome once again to the Virtual Cats Corner. As you all know, this is a place where you can really feel free to share your thoughts, tips, and tricks when it comes to transitioning to working and or job searching in this time. In this webinar, we have Nayo. So Nayo and I are the co-hosts of the Virtual Cats Corner sessions. We have Diana, who's our communications and social media expert. Rosalia, who's the manager of the Career Advising and Transition Services team. Fantastic. And today we're going to have a different format for the session. It's going to be more of a panel style session. And I don't know if if Nayo, you want to introduce the speaker?
I'll introduce, for people who don't know Elizabeth, I guess almost everyone here seems to know her, and everyone here seems to like her. I don't remember all of my teachers from when I was going to school, but those who truly made a difference, I'll remember them my whole life. So she acts as a career advisor, as a mentor, a teacher. She does so much more, and she's really engaged with her students. So even by talking with her, she still speaks with some of her students that she teaches 25 years ago. That's how strong she builds her relationship with her students. So she's our very own McGill University School of Continuing Studies lecturer in PR and communication. Elizabeth Hirst, I'll let you the mic now.
Oh, thanks, Nayo. Hello, everybody. Those new faces and familiar faces. Glad to see you. What I was proposing for today is that each of the guest speakers, whom I will let introduce themselves, because that's the icebreaker. You'll see if your Zoom screen is like mine, Steffi is at the top right hand corner. Could you there? Stéphanie Princivil, who graduated quite recently, what, 2 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah. And Ashley Jane, who is just below me on my screen anyway. She's waving. Yeah, can you wave again, Ashley?
Hey.
There you go. Okay, so everybody knows who our panelists are today. Ashley graduated a few years ago, 2014?
2015.
2015, okay. And has come back already to one of my classes as a panelist on a kind of a live version of what we're doing today, where she's talked about being in public relations, being a freelancer in public relations, and what she's learned from it. And she was a very popular speaker, so I was very keen to get her back today. Stephanie is a first timer for this kind of thing, although I've invited her to my capstone course in July. She has made some very impressive moves since graduating. She was a guiding star in her class to her team. I think I can say now that if it hadn't been for her, her team wouldn't have got through.
Oh my God.
I shouldn't say that, but she picked up, you knew she was going to pick up the reins and lead. So I've had my eye on her and been really impressed with what she has achieved in the last year or two. So what I'm going to do is one at a time and alternating, ask each of them, 1, what are you doing now? 2, how did you get there? 3, what did you learn in the program that has helped you in your career? A little promotion there. And what have you learned in the workplace that surprised you, that you didn't get in the classroom? And finally, tips for networking, because networking is absolutely super important. When it comes, especially in public relations and communications, it's not a field where you see a lot of ads up. Sometimes the Grenier Nouvelle or something like that will publish something, but there's a lot of word of mouth because we're communicators and that's what we do. And the positions are very often filled before there's even a job description written for them. So your network, people in communications or wanting to go into communications, is super, super important. One of those things is professional associations. I would highly advise you join IABC, SQPRP, or the CPRS while you still have a student card, because you'll save big bucks on that and you'll meet people who hire people. And Stéphanie is now a person who hires people. And in fact, she has hired someone who was in the same class with her.
Yes.
Because that's where the networking starts. It starts while you're still in school. You know who the strong people are and you hang around with them. I had one guy 15 years ago who was such a strong student. Everybody wanted to be on his team because they knew that he was not going to hand in anything that didn't get an A. Not that he let them slide, but that's the way that networking starts when you're already in the classroom. But then there's that margin. Then there's the classroom here and the workplace here. And the purpose of today's session and what our speakers are going to share is how you get from here to there, because it overlaps. So I'm going to ask Ashley to start with. Tell us what you do and how you got to do it.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's well. My name is Ashley Jane, aka Champagne Jane. I'm a graduate from McGill. I had a really great time studying the PR, doing the PR certificate. And I've been working in PR ever since studying at McGill, so since 2015. My background is in marketing and events. And over the years, I've positioned myself as a professional networker, as I can say. What I do is I help startups and small businesses maximize their reach. So it's all about strategies on how to connect with the best people possible to attain your personal goals as a business owner. So I've been doing this and I've been working on multiple projects. So I've been signing long-term clients and I also do punctual mandates. Pre-COVID, I was working on 2 anniversary parties for local Montreal businesses. And so both companies wanted to organize a strategic event. So working on guest lists, inviting the right people to the events and pretty much building visual strategies that communicate the vision. And so I've been working on that, but also once the marketing is on point, doing media relations that I really, really enjoy. So I've been working with the journalists for the past couple of years, booking interviews and getting as much press coverage for my clients as I possibly can. So that's basically what I'm offering for now.
There you are. And I just want to add a note. She's also, Ashley is a super networker because I went to an IABC meeting here in Montreal, International Association of Business Communicators, which you should all know. And she turned up at the meeting, introduced herself, and it turned out that during the 3 years I was away, that's when Ashley had been studying. So we'd actually never met before. She made a point of going around to the tables, passing out her business card, chatting with people, enjoying herself, saying what she did, and expanded her network tremendously just in that one night.
Yeah, that's how we met.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And I'm going to put you on hold, Ashley, virtually, and move on to Steffi, because she's even more recent graduate, a couple of years ago, and took my capstone course then, which is where we met. And she has gone on to do something interesting, and I'm going to let her describe it to you.
Well, hi everyone. I'm a little nervous, so I'm going to try to be amazing. So basically, I am a graduate of the program, Public and Communications from McGill from 2018. I started working slightly before in the industry, but I feel as though, well, I know as though the program really solidified me as who I am, the person today. So quickly I realized that in my industry, there's not enough that's being done for underrepresented communities, especially for women of color. And so I decided to really help those sort of brands communicate to the press. And that's literally my niche. And I've been doing it since July of last year. So it's my first year anniversary. And it's been really awesome. Just helping the brands position themselves, communicate. So I do a lot of media relations. I speak a lot to the press. And that's basically what I've been doing. A lot of strategy, a lot of how can they position themselves to be known mainstream wise, especially when I would say now times have changed, but before it was very difficult for those brands to be heard. You'd be really surprised. A lot of brands who do say that they have that diversity or inclusion in their DNA rarely give those people a voice. So I was really helpful in bridging that gap and really living my mission, which is, like I said, to help those groups thrive.
You want to give your firm a little plug here?
Yes, my firm is called The Hue PR. It's small, so we're like a team of 4, and we're based out of Montreal, but we work with various clients in the United States as well as in Montreal. So that's been very fun.
That's great. I'm going to pause for a moment because I see there's some chats coming up. Niall, are you collecting any questions that we should, you think we should throw in at this point?
No, so far no questions. People are still preparing, so I'll let you know. I'll let you know as soon as I get them.
Cool. Okay, I'm going then back to Ashley and ask her what did you learn in the program, and feel free to be totally honest. What did you learn in the PR program that you have put to use in your career?
Well, I learned quite a bit actually. Having worked in events for so long, I thought that I knew PR. It was a concept that I kind of romanticized, but it turns out that once I started working in PR, it was a lot different. Essentially, PR is relationship management, and working with a lot of media. It's hard to work with media when you don't have the tools and how to communicate to them or the proper network. So by studying in PR at McGill, I've learned quite a bit. The values of networking, as for one. After class, I would actually make time to speak to my professors. And that's exactly how I got into working with media and in PR. One day I was speaking with Victoria Pickerings, that some of you might know. I had her as a professor, and thanks to her, she got me a gig. She referred me to a client of hers, and that was pretty much a stepping stone for the career that I have today. So you see, networking, so the value of networking. I've always been very social and meeting with people, but it's something to consider if you're, I don't know if people this is a career panel for people who want to get into public relations, right? I would suggest that anyone wanting to, to thrive in this industry is to look around you and ask questions, talk to strangers as much as you possibly can, because you never know who you're dealing with, and you don't know who that person is dealing with as well. So, it all takes one experience, and that experience will lead you to the next. And as you built this experience, you build credibility for yourself, and you know, it just all builds up from there. So the value of networking, I've also learned that practice makes perfect, obviously, like I was saying. So what I would suggest is get your hands dirty. By taking that gig that Victoria Pickering's had referred me to, I learned that, you know, one experience will get you to the next. So that definitely led me to where I am today. And also, I've learned as a freelancer, freelancing is very different than, you know, agency work. Obviously, when you come into a set job or set agency, agencies have infrastructures put in place for you. As opposed to freelancing, you're basically on your own and you can't possibly know everything. So it's important to reach out and to ask questions to other freelancers. And, you know, it's all about networking at the end of the day. I think your success in PR will be based on the quality of your relationships, because we are PR at the end of the day. If you're to represent someone else's people, you got to start with your own. So, and while you're freelancing, what I would suggest, what I've learned, is to always provide a written contract that defines your scope of work. That's like a huge deal. If you're to start freelancing and offering your services, you want to manage your client expectations, trust me. And what the contract will do is it will keep you on track with what you have to deliver. So that's something that I've learned over these past few years working on my own.
Super.
Among so much, we could speak for hours, right? I mean, there's so much, you know.
Oh, so we have a first question here.
Okay.
It's been asked, so to both panelists, you can either both reply or one of you. So both of you decided to not work in an agency. What led you to decide to become an entrepreneur or a freelancer rather than work in an agency?
Steffi, do you want to go or?
Sure. And thank you for what you said, because I agree with everything. So as you were talking, I'm like nodding. I'm like, yes. For me, I always knew that I wanted to branch out. Right from being at school, I was like, okay, I could do this. I could branch out. But it's definitely not easy. I also felt that by branching out, I learned so much more on the job. And, you know, branching out, starting your agency is a lot like freelancing, at least at the beginning. Once you start working with other people, and then you can delegate, you know, certain tasks to your colleagues, then it becomes like an agency. Then you have like, you're dealing with like multiple clients, but both are pretty similar. I just felt as though I just wanted to jump in, feet first, and that's what I did. It's been working really well for me. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Ashley?
Yeah. So actually, I really enjoyed working in-house. I had a couple of corporate jobs before doing my own thing. I think it's essential. You really want to work for someone else and, you know, incorporate and get that feel of structure before doing your own thing. You'll learn a lot from working in-house in a corporate environment. For me, while I was studying at McGill, I was working as a marketing manager that I really enjoyed. However, the team at the time was very, so the politics were very conservative. And as a creative type, I found that my ideas, my wings were constantly cut, so I couldn't evolve. And that was a big deal breaker for me, because I had all these ideas and I wanted to bring to the table. So, and while I was studying, one of our final projects that maybe some of you will get to work on, or maybe you've already worked on this, we were asked to launch a business. So at that time, I decided to, hey, I'm gonna, you know, launch my little agency. And that's kind of how I got to conceptualize the idea of me freelancing and working for myself. So I was working in-house, but at the same time, I was kind of, you know, establishing, so working on my values, what am I good at, how can I help people, and basically putting an idea to that concept. So eventually over time, I just took that decision, and I've been freelancing ever since. It'll be 4 years in October of this year.
Congrats.
Well,
Oh,
congratulations.
I was a lot
Go
like
on.
you, Ashley. Sorry. I was a public relations strategist before I kind of like got on my own. It's very important to really learn how to work with the corporate world. And also that's where you build, especially for like connecting with journalists, you build a network in your position. And then when you're ready and you have certain resources, then you go off on your own. That would be like one of my advice. Although I didn't start in an agency, I was assuming a role that allowed me to transition without, too major conflicts. So.
A follow-up question for Stephanie.
Yeah.
I love how your brand really addresses this key issue of lack of diversity in beauty and lifestyle brands, and the overall branding is so beautiful, by the way. Can you tell us a bit more about how you built, or how you're building an inclusive community with your agency that really focuses on diversity and inclusion?
Absolutely. The way that I built the brand was, it took me about a year. So it takes a while, because the one thing I learned in the program is communication goes both ways. And we wanted to, and I took that with me, and we communicate in every way. So with the colors, the fonts, everything is a form of communication to what you want to say to your future clients or people that are just looking at you. So immediately I work with a graphic designer that understood that language is very important for me. Everything is done with intent, and that I wanted to show diversity and inclusion in every single way. So it took us a year to really get it right. And it was executed just the way that I wanted to. And also, I made it a point that before I work with someone, I make sure I read their you should do that anyway. I should say, as a side note, before you work with a client, make sure that client really fits your mission as well. Because I made sure that I research the people that I work with, make sure we have a conversation so they know what I stand for. And I also, it's very important to me that the company does hire people of color, does hire people from the LGBTQ community. It's very, very, very important for me, because that's literally what I stand for. So that's how I showcase this, by choosing, by making sure that we're in agreement as to like what we both stand for. And I believe that because of this, we were able to create really nice campaigns, because we understood what we both, what this was about, if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes total sense. And I love the way you were so.
I hope I answered the question too.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense and so clear. And absolutely, that's such good advice to being true to your mission and standing by it when you're creating a network and a community of like-minded people that are supportive. That's amazing. Absolutely. Thank you.
And thanks for sharing. We had another question from Teresa, our new intern. So she's got a question to both panelists. So do you feel the need to pursue a master's degree to work in the field, or was the education that you got from McGill SCS adequate to get you a job, to get you going in the field?
I'll let you go.
Okay. I think the certificate is very well-rounded and very, there's a lot of content, a lot of great classes to be had in this program. For me, I was completely blown away because I had So I had studied at UQAM previously. I have a business administration certificate, and I've been working for a while, and then I knew that I wanted to work more towards, web marketing and journalism. So I took couple of classes until I ended up, getting into the PR certificate. But the PR certificate at McGill was ultimately exactly what I needed to get me in the door. That's from my experience. An MBA is, I still think about it today because I would love to be a lecturer like Elizabeth at McGill University in this, in this field, but to each their own, I guess.
Thank you for that. That was great. For me, I definitely want to do the master's at some point. That's just for personal ambition. I've always wanted to do it. However, I agree with Ashley as well. Like, it's so well-rounded. And what I do love about the program at McGill is that a lot of our teachers work in the industry or have like a lot of experience, and they work firsthand, or they've done the stuff that we're experiencing. So they always put a twist, their own personal twist, especially in our courses. And it's like, you don't need it, honestly, just because it's so meaty. Mm-hmm. However, if it's a personal ambition and you have other aspiration, I definitely encourage you to do it. Yeah.
Yep. Well, thanks for this great information. So of course, if you put as much energy in your power of networking, then you want to put in your MBA, then that's going to open you some doors from what I see. We have another question from Alexandra. So what do you think of the viability of the communications and event planning sector in light of the COVID-19 situation?
Could you say that again? Could you read that again?
What do you think of the viability of the communications and event planning sector in light of COVID-19?
Well, I'll start by saying that, structures are definitely changing. Coming from an events background, I was just working on, on event anniversaries that have been postponed and canceled until next year, which is incredible. But it's actually allowing, opportunities for virtual meetings like we're doing today, and also I'm seeing that a lot of my clients are actually picking up on that. So they're offering free consultations, their expertise, they're organizing small, meetings with other professionals in their field. These are great ways to get new people interested, and we have to adapt. It is the new reality for now.
Can I go back to Teresa's question for a moment? Because I get asked it quite a lot. Do I need a master's? And there's two or three different aspects to that. If you're working in an organization with a heavy-duty management structure, particularly a for-profit organization, an MBA is not a bad idea. I know it's a lot of work. Some of our graduates have gone on to get MBAs, and it opens up possibilities, particularly in corporate public relations and strategic public relations, because just those three little letters tell a story to your potential clients and your potential employers. I know what you're going through. I understand management. You may find that MBA topics and their approach is quite different from public relations. That's where you can add your bit, because they don't teach them nearly enough in communications or public relations, despite the fact that students want it. So that's a solid long-term commitment. And I think that a lot of our PR and communications people have trouble moving up the ladder. They've got maybe 5, 6, 7 years experience. They want to be more senior. They want to be around the management table if they're not already. And an MBA is an excellent introduction to that, and it places you very squarely to, I think, enough to get the most senior position that you really want. If your specialty is not-for-profits, it is, you might want another certificate or something. I think what Ashley did is interesting, that she got a business certificate. You need to have something to do with business. First, to speak the language. Secondly, to understand how organizations work, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit. They're still people. And what you can get out of even a business certificate is things like corporate culture and organizational behavior. I would recommend courses in that to anyone, because it is essentially what a lot of our internal PR is all about. I wouldn't, however, say that a PhD is necessary. A PhD scares the daylights out of business people because most of them don't have it, and they don't want to hire. I'm sorry. I've been very outspoken, right? Tonight, I'm going to be, or today, I'm going to do it again, because I don't want to hire anybody smarter than they are. Back when I started work with the dinosaurs, I had trouble getting a job because I had an undergraduate degree, and my boss was told, "Don't hire the girl with the degree. Then she's going to be a smarty pants. She's going to try and change everything. She's going to be a shit disturber." And they asked him later, "Who did you hire?" And he said, "The shit disturber," which I was. But so it's kind of depends on the industry you're in and the level you want to get to. And I would advise, don't try and get all your education up front. Move until you feel the need, and then go back to it. You don't need to be in school for 20 years before you start practicing. And in fact, it is a very good idea to little practice, a little more education, a little more practice, a little more education, until you work your way up. You'll know, I think you'll know when you need it.
Yeah.
That note, I have a follow-up to that. How has, according to your experience, PR and communications really evolved since when you started?
When I started, oh yes, yeah. Well, we lost the dinosaurs. We now have birds, but huge difference, huge difference, particularly in expertise and education. There were 2 courses, individual courses offered at McGill with no supervision from McGill. They were non-credit courses when I started in 1975. I took them both because I happened to be working at McGill in public relations at the time. And I said, "You know those courses that we give?" And they said, "Okay, well, we're working on some credit courses right now. We want to put all the courses through Senate and give university credit for them. And you're on the committee." So that's, put your money where your mouth is and careful what you say. But that was a long time ago, and I'm still involved. Since then, UQAM has been built, and they have a specialty in public relations. The University of Montreal had night courses at the time. They have since, I believe, become credit. I was on their curriculum committee for 7 years, but they were credit courses by then. There are still non-credit courses at Concordia. CPRS has really evolved. The whole profession, like the number of people taking courses and graduating every year in public relations is insane. It's in hundreds. When I got into public relations, is because I knew somebody who was in what we called personnel at the time at McGill, and said, "Well, you're writing a master's thesis, so you must be able to write. So, go see so-and-so," and he hired me over the phone. And then when I wanted to go into an agency, I went to Beauregard, Hutchinson, McCoy, Capistran, as it was at the time, later became National Public Relations. I knew Luc Beauregard through CPRS networking, And I walked down the street and I walked into Luke's office and I said, would you hire me? And he said, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Now, any student now can tell you you've got, I mean, 6 interviews and tests, and we had only one branch at the time. It's now all across the country and internationally. I think also that public relations has gained a lot of respect that it didn't have before.
Mhm.
It still doesn't have what it deserves, partly because of people like Tim Bell, who should have been shot in a riot in South Africa somewhere. But there's still people, because of the lack of entry-level requirements, who anybody can put up a sign and say, I'm a public relations expert, and how's a client or an employer to know the difference? I've seen some really bad people hired. Recently, I saw somebody on LinkedIn who wanted to connect with me. She said she's a public relations expert, and I said, oh, innocently knowing the answer, because I've never heard of her, where did you get your training? And she said, well, I don't have any training, but I've done some volunteer work. And I said, oh boy, there goes the reputation again. But I said, look, stay in touch. Here are some really good books. Here are some really good courses. Anything you need to know, yada, yada, yada. She hasn't got back to me. My only hope is it just kind of, either she learns a lot or it kind of fizzles out. CPRS, Canadian Public Relations Society, has something called the PRK, Public Relations Knowledge Exam, which is meant as an entry-level certification. Pass this exam and you can add it to your CV, and employers in the know, who are still not numerous enough, will understand that you have the basics, and that the professional association recognizes those basics. They were set up, the exam was set up in concert with government people and agency people and independent public relations professionals, as well as CPRS. So I was on that committee. So that's a beginning, but it's still too easy for any idiot to call themselves in PR. And even people in marketing are mistaught. Sorry, MBA guys, but Kotler still describes public relations as a subset of marketing, which is devoted to free publicity, period. Others think it has to do with public speaking and self-promotion. I went over to the Faculty of Management and spoke to their student association, explained to them what public relations was, and the reaction was like, ah, because they were hoping to sort of slide into PR because they had a degree in marketing. And they said, oh, gee, can you get a job without it? And I said, sure you can. Just know that you have thousands of other people who have degrees, diplomas, certificates, up to and including PhDs in communications and public relations, and you'll be competing with them. Rant stopped.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for showing us how really there's been such an amazing growth in more respect in the PR communications industries, but still a lot needs to be done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, I have to say there was one example that really encouraged me. Well, there have been many, but I will spare you the rest of them. Financial Times was writing about the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And in its article, it said, these people should have listened to their public relations experts. Now, you wouldn't have heard that from a journalist when I started. So the business journalists, if they know what public relations is, we've made some progress.
Yeah, thanks. I hear more and more people talking about the importance of PR and communication. Of course, marketing is important, but the power of the word of mouth is having even stronger impact with everything that's out there. I even included a quote yesterday about Bill Gates, who, as a billionaire, if he would spend his last dollar, it would be in PR and communication because he sees so much value out of it.
Did he say
So
that?
I hope, yeah, he said that.
I love that.
Yeah, he said, you just said, if I would spend my last dollar, it would be in PR and PR. So then of course, the article starts talking about why. But yeah, there was 7 great reasons why, and I think we should all include it a little bit more in our everyday life. Well, job searching across industries. So what you say, what you do has a strong impact, and we should learn to be better at it.
Yeah.
Great. So
Yeah.
I know it's a little bit far away, but we had Alexandra who was asking to continue the conversation. Follow-up question: should I take the PR certificate to make a career shift, then continue with the professional diploma in finance? I know you already talked about doing a business, studying a little bit in business. Would you say also finance would be a great complement?
Yep. Most public relations people are not number crunchers, and that has hindered us a lot in the field. It means, for some people, it means not getting to the management table, to the C-suite. We need to know about it. We need to speak the language, and we need to show our clients and our employers that we know about it. So I think that would be an excellent, excellent move. We need more PR in finance and more finance in PR.
Fantastic.
About
Great.
those transitioning to PR and communications, like those entering the fields, those roles. You mentioned, Elizabeth, so many people are assuming that because, for example, they're volunteering in organizations, that suddenly they're PR experts. What would you say is the top skill set that needs to really stand out when you're really entering these roles? I know it's a bit of a general question, but what would you say is really important to build your credibility?
Writing is still number one. When professionals are surveyed, as they are fairly regularly, and if anyone's interested in the latest views on public relations, I recommend the Global Alliance website, because it represents 40 professional associations around the world, as well as USC at Annenberg. They do an annual study of what's going on in public relations, and Edelman, the public relations agency, does a trust report on who trusts whom. Those will give you the latest in what's important in the field. But it has always been writing. If you can't write, if you're not articulate, forget it. Go into something else, or go into marketing and hire a PR person. Another one I would say is judgment, which has always been high. You need people judgment and organizational judgment. You need strategy in your head. What I want from my students is not to take from the textbook and apply it to a case. I want them to take from the textbook, put it into their heads, add value, and then apply it. One thing that we see coming up more and more, and is almost at the top of the list, if not at the top, is ethics. Because we're reading more and more about people who are not behaving ethically. I think it goes back to the beginning of time. People like P.T. Barnum or Elmer Gantry, who thought that getting a lot of attention was just great. I won't name people in this day and age. I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but Tim Bell is a great example of all the rules that you should not follow. That story broke 2 weeks before our ethics course. I think that was the one Teresa was in. No, it was fall 2017 anyway. And it was perfect. More and more organizations are understanding that they need to care about their employees more than their shareholders. In the 80s, we started with this shareholder value stuff, which has held back organizations. Now, managers have brought in something called a balanced scorecard, where you need your shareholders on side, but you also need to fill in the other gaps in their little quadrant, which includes employees and neighbors consumers. All these people have to be happy. If you've got unhappy employees and unhappy consumers, then who cares what your shareholders are getting? It's not going to last long. Where did I go off track here? Oh yes, ethics. There are new organizations called, one called Corporate Knights, which is based in Canada. Others, which Paula teaches in her course, what they something companies, Nicolette, if you can think what it is, jump in. Companies that are now explicitly saying that their values include treating their employees well, focusing on environment and diversity, because guess what? Our young people want to work for those companies. They don't want to work for companies with bad reputations. It's increasingly important. You just didn't see this years ago. Tobacco companies could pick up almost anybody to work for them. And the last one I talked to had a hell of a time. They were offering me some big bucks. And I said, what field is this in that there's so many bucks and bonuses and that sort of thing? And the headhunter said, that's the trouble, tobacco. And I said, good luck. They eventually found somebody I'd never heard of, so I'm assuming he didn't have too much training. But anyway.
Teresa mentioned B Corps. Are those B Corp certified companies?
B Corps, thank you very much. Yep. It is really important, to the point where the Business Roundtable in the States, as recently as last August, I believe, came out with their annual statement where they said that ethics and treating their diverse publics properly and standing up for the right values was their most important concern. And these are all CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Now, as I said to my ethics class at the time, at least they know what to say. What they say and what they do will take a while to combine. But at least somebody has banged it into their heads that at least you should talk the talk. It's step one, but it's the first time I've ever seen that. And I think it has to do with trust. Ultimately, public relations is about trust. It's built on trust. And if organizations, if employees, media, consumers, stakeholders, financial analysts, governments trust an organization, they're going to get a heck of a lot more support in advancing their own objectives. Public relations and communications helps the organization to advance their own objectives. And unless they ignore ethics and trust and shoot themselves in the foot, they will do well, especially long-term. Look at Maple Leaf when they had the listeriosis crisis. They already had a very good PR team. They already had a very good reputation. It helped them get through that crisis. That and the way they handled it, with Michael McCain going on air and saying, I'm Michael McCain, people have died, I'm thoroughly ashamed, and we're going to do something about it. He was just amazing. Transparency is another thing. For me, it's reveal information unless there's a reason not to. And this is where I have fun with legal representatives whose position is usually do not reveal unless you have to. So, you know, that it makes for a fun conversation. But transparency, authenticity, trust, ethics, and you better know how to write.
Great. So you're getting a lot of thanks and love in the chat. Thanks for sharing your incredible insights. So I saw that you said the top skills were writing, judgment, and ethics. So you didn't even talk about the power of being a great communicator or being out an extrovert. Do you think that people who are a little bit less shy, who don't have that public speaking skill, could still make it in the field?
I believe so. I'll ask our panelists to weigh in on this also. But yeah, I've had some quite shy students. They're not up there first when it comes to present. They don't have their hands up first, but they may be amazing writers. They may be amazing on social media. They're people who work more in their head, but they can produce website content. They can be community managers. Yeah, Definitely. I mean, sure, sometimes you have to be a spokesperson, but it's not, you don't take on a PR job. You don't have to do absolutely everything in the book. You can specialize. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great.
I would like to add on to this. You don't have to specialize in everything, no, but I do agree with Elizabeth that communication skills is really number one because, but you know, you can also delegate, such as Steffi's, you know, she's built a team around her services and now she can outsource and whatever. So that's always a possibility. When you're freelancing, however, you're really expected to manage every aspect of the mandate. And yes, of course, you can delegate and outsource, but communication is very essential. And I'd love to share a story, if I may, concerning ethics. It's so relevant. Just before coronavirus broke out, a client of mine made a joke about the virus that broke a scandal. So I got caught up in this scandal for about 2 weeks, which took a lot of my time and efforts. At this point, because my client actually wanted to, because he was getting so much, he was getting attention from the press across Canada, and also he was getting a lot of death threats from a very angry community. Now, at this point, as a freelancer, you know, I had never been in that situation. So my first reaction was to reach out and to talk to professionals and ask them what they would do. So that also is networking, you know, reaching out to people of experience and asking them, you know, on, you know, their input. So at this point, the client's freaking out and he wants to completely delete every social profile that he has online, which to me was absolutely, I was just baffled by this type of decision. So this is where the ethics come in. So for the very first time, I actually stood, you know, and got angry at this client, and I opposed him in this decision of wanting to kind of vanish instead of being transparent in what had happened. So I finally, you know, we concluded with this open letter that I obviously drafted and everything. I was in charge of this mandate, which is very, very dense and stressful, but you know, it worked in our favor. So yes, transparency is everything. You have to, you know, take responsibility for your actions. In a case of a publicist, you do this for your client. And yeah.
Okay. I guess that this,
I think if
go
that's,
on.
I may add to this as well, which is very interesting. Thank you for your point, Elizabeth and Ashley. For me too, like a skill that I feel is needed, but I wish it was offered too, is a bit more of psychology. It's very, very important because especially when it comes to like consumer psychology and which business comes into play, I imagine, is when you're dealing with a crisis, especially, what people want is authenticity, the truth, and just kind of like an action. What's the step forward? What are you going to do next to kind of remedy the situation? So if you understand basic, you know, humanity, it's like, wow, you did something wrong. I understand. I'm sorry for it. And then here's my solution. That's when you can kind of like begin to, and that's the beauty of public relations as well, because a lot of opportunity are, and I learned that in your class, Elizabeth, but a lot of opportunities are born out of like mistakes, are born out of errors, and yeah, that's just kind of like my point on that. That's just another skill that I think should be added in there.
Yeah. Many successful people learn from their challenges or failures. I guess once you succeed to a challenge like this, that really builds your career and your credibility. Thank you so much for sharing. I know we're reaching 1 o'clock. If anyone has some last minute question, we can continue as long as you want. I know some of you are maybe in their lunchtime, so feel free to pop in and start asking questions directly. I don't know if anyone had anything else to share.
can speak up, or you can write it in the chat, whatever you feel most comfortable with.
I'd like to know if Ashley and Steffi have any other words of advice about networking and starting out that they haven't had a chance to express yet.
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a wonderful question that I'm one of those people where I was a bit shy to network at first, because, you know, you have this thing when you finish your program, you're like, yes, I got it. That's all I need. I don't need to do much. No, there's a lot of work that comes into play. And actually, I got a lot of opportunities by networking, sort of like what Ashley said, and you just meet different people. And sometimes networking is just connecting other people who may be a better fit. Like, you don't have to be that fit for everyone. And now it just comes naturally, and there's a human aspect to it, which is really important when it's kind of like a side note when you're reaching out to journalists as well, by being like a human being and just being really like authentic when you talk to them. So I kind of use that same tactic. You know, I make sure that I know a bit about them before I want to network. You know, in the sentence, well, I love this article that you wrote. I just want it to be really real. I try, because it's really hard in this digital world to create like authentic bonds with people, especially on LinkedIn, you know, so that's kind of like my approach to it. Networking is super important. It doesn't always have to be about you. It could just be about connecting others.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Mm-hmm. Can I add to this?
Yes.
Thank you, Stéphanie. So networking is just everything, right? It's your future. Is your success in PR is really based on the quality of your relationships. So right now, because of, you know, the pandemic, obviously events are on pause until next year. So what I would suggest, I'm seeing a lot of groups online where you can, you know, these groups, these networks are forming, join them, ask questions. Even what I'm doing right now, in the past, I would have been terrified to speak out and to share my experiences out of fear of being judged. This is a self-limiting belief that you can work on it if you really want to. So set your goals for yourself and just get out there and talk to strangers as much as you possibly can, because they too have networks and you never know who you're dealing with. So get out there.
Thanks. Thanks. This is incredible information. I had a little question coming in the same lines. So where do you go to network? Since now there's not really any places to go, do you mainly use LinkedIn, Instagram? Go, like you say, in groups? Where would you suggest people to go into?
Well, nowadays there's the groups. So on Facebook, there's a lot of different groups on Facebook that are forming. Even events, virtual events. Why don't you just explore those and go in and see who's there, and then connect and say, hey, I saw you there. I think this approach is a lot more dynamic and engaging, as opposed to social media. We're being exposed to so much information at once when we're on our apps. You know, it's very superficial. But by going into groups, it allows for a lot, for a little bit more depth. And yeah, so I would say get in there and follow up with some people that perhaps you've seen on these in these groups.
That's great. Actually, you're saying actually engaging in one-on-one conversations with people in the groups rather than like just liking or.
Yeah, absolutely. Sending messages and saying, hey, I just, you know, I saw you participate in this. We have this in common. What are you up to? How is everything? You know, just to ask questions to initiate a conversation. And out of that, if that develops, you never know. This guy, you know, it just starts with that one, the first contact, right? Sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you 100%, Ashley. Oh, I'm so sorry, Elizabeth.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
For me too, another thing that I'd like to point out is when you work in PR, it's like you have to be open and accessible. It's not really an industry. You can't afford to be you know, an elitist and kind of, you know, you just have to be open. So the way that I approach it is very similar to Ashley. I joined tons of groups, and, you know, I even, when I connect to people, I'm like, if you want DIY, I don't know if I'm saying it properly, PR strategies that are free, if you want to just connect and talk via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I'm open everywhere. If you just have a question and you just want to connect at some point, let me know. And I find that that really works, on top of also, you know, asking them questions about who they are, how are they, and just like building real connections with people. So I've done this and it's worked for me. And it's really interesting too, to kind of like, in this world that we're living of social distancing, of connecting with people beyond, you know, can you do me a favor or can I do you a favor? It's just building real relationships.
Trust.
Right.
Trust. And if I can just add an exclamation point to what Ashley and Steffi have just said, I have asked a lot of public relations specialists, very senior people, mid-level people, and I've sent students to them, and I've invited them into the classroom. I've never, ever had someone say no, because we're a generous community. Everybody loves to share advice. And if as a student you write and you say, I saw your profile on LinkedIn, or my friend Ashley or Steffi told me that you're doing such and such, and I think we have something in common. Can we talk? Can we Zoom? Can we something like that? I can't imagine anybody saying no. Just ask for a 15-minute information interview, and there's the first link in your chain.
Thank you. I wanted to echo that, because we at CATS, it's our biggest, if there's something we repeat in all of our workshops and everything, it's reach out and network in a meaningful, authentic way. And you all brought up the importance of authenticity, and which was wonderful, but there's a lot of reticence to do that. And I'm so glad you all brought it up, because even if someone were to say no, that's the worst that could happen. So, and then you move on and you speak to someone else. So, and any of you here, we're here to help you with that. If you want tips on networking, please reach out to us, and we'll help you with that, because it is important, not just in PR, of course, but in every industry right now. So thank you. And thank you, Elizabeth. I could hear you talk all day. Thank you so much for coming. And Ashley and Steffi, how fantastic it is for us to have alumni come back and talk about what they learned at SCS, what it means for them, and what they've done with it in their careers. And thank you both for taking the time. It's really
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Yeah, makes us want to go into the PR and communication program. Well, this was yeah, go on, Ashley.
Because we were talking about networking, guys, if anyone is looking for a group, you know, there's a bunch of apps, right? And I don't know if anyone's dating at the moment, but there's the Bumble app that has the feature Bumble Business.
Yes.
That's a good way to network and to connect with people that are in business in Montreal. So that's always an option, an opportunity. I checked into Bumble BFF last year because I wanted to meet new girlfriends and to exchange and to brainstorm. And I met some very interesting, you know, young women on there. So yeah, that's always an option.
Very helpful. I hadn't heard of it. Thank you.
And if I could offer one more thing, of course, everybody knows I'm a Toastmasters cult member, but I'm no longer a member. But some of you mentioned, well, what if we talked about it being an introvert and perhaps having, being shy about communicating. It's a wonderful organization to improve your public speaking, enhance your leadership skills, but also network. So if you're looking into PR and you're worried about the public speaking aspect of it or the networking, it's a wonderful organization to join. They're all over Montreal in English, French, bilingual groups. And right now everything is free and online. They haven't stopped during the pandemic. So I highly recommend that as well.
Yes. Thank you. So networking doesn't come as a natural thing that we have when we're born. So we all have to work on it. So thank you for sharing all these great tips. We're going to share them also on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Thanks everyone for joining us. We have another incredible session next week on Tuesday. This one, instead of being during lunchtime, it's going to be in the evening from 5 to 6. I hope to see all of you there. You can shoot also your questions before. We'll send it to the speaker so they can have it beforehand. And if there's any comments, questions, or whatever you might have, send it to kat@mcgill.ca or come and write to us directly on social media. We don't bite and we love to talk. So
I just want
thanks.
to say thank you so much to Elizabeth, Stephanie, and Ashley for your amazing insights. You've shared so much today, and not just on PR, but just the value of networking. I think that's virtually for any industry or role is key to really succeeding and developing a community that you want to be a part of. So thank you so much.